lies and the conspiracies and threats that are even coming in today, performed exceedingly well. And we had one of the most secure and efficient elections with one of the highest turnouts we've ever had on record, all because election officials are the guardians of our democracy and are the heroes that we should be celebrating on and they work on the front lines during this pandemic and did so with grace and dignity. And we should be thanking them every single day where we have an opportunity to do so.
One of the things that I think was just sort of a shocking turn in the public sphere last year was when Americans across the spectrum and across the country felt like they needed to come to the defense of the Postal Service. The president at the time lambasting the Postal Service, denouncing it as some sort of scheme or something that was stacked against him or something that should be done away with. We saw draconian changes to Postal Service policies that had real impact on the ground in terms of slowing down the mail and hurting a lot of businesses, freaking out a lot of people in the country in terms of what was going to happen with our ballot applications and our ballots when it came to voting by mail, in addition to everything else that we do by mail. I think a lot of people in the country right now are surprised to know that the Postmaster General from that era is still in place. And I think people are worried that his policies might have permanently sort of kneecapped the Postal Service so that it's not going to be able anytime soon to get back to the levels of service that we were used to, and to it being a non-controversial, well-supported part of American public life. I guess I want to ask, given your incredibly important role now on the Postal Service Board of Governors, if you feel that, if you're aware of that consternation in the country, and if you can give people any assurance that these things might get better.
Well, I'm certainly aware of it. And, I think that there's a culmination of issues that occurred, the pandemic certainly being one of them. I mean, the Postal Service has a frontline critical infrastructure workforce that continue to deliver mail and packages, by the way, in record numbers. And because they've, a lot of that equipment has been underinvested in, especially on the package front, there were backlogs, and businesses experienced that, and people experienced that with their medications. And so those are things that now that the 10-year plan has been put out there, once I join the board and have obviously more access to the information that current board members have, those are things that I'm going to certainly focus on in terms of service, because service has to be effective. It has to be universal. The Postal Service is one of our most admired institutions. It connects businesses and commerce to people and customers. It connects government to people and services and vice versa. And it ensures that people can access their medication. And in some parts of the country, like Alaska, and I just spoke to Senator Murkowski about this, people rely on the Postal Service as their grocery store, their hardware store, their bank, and everything else, their vote by mail ballots and election information. And that post office is a lifeline to many communities around the country. And so it has to be effective, and it's in the Constitution that it needs to deliver a universal service. And so service is one of my key priorities. It's been my priority in the election administration world. The parallels between the Postal Service and election administration are very obvious. There's been a lack of investment in technology and innovation over time. There's often funding issues, which is the same in election administration. There's seasonal workforce issues. So the sort of expansion and retraction, both of those things are parallel in both of those worlds. And then, of course, there's policy issues. There's policies that have tied the Postal Service to not being able to keep up financially. And we have to address those things. And I look forward to joining the board to think about these things in a creative and strategic way, and certainly bring my expertise from the election administration world, because I truly believe there's a whole host of opportunities for the Postal Service to further improve their operations in partnership with local and state government, especially on the elections front. And there's huge opportunities to do that going forward.
Well, this is a part of the government that until like now, was an incredibly low-profile part of the government. I do think that the admiration that the American people have for the post office and the amount that we all depend on it means that we really, as a people, got our back up to see the Postal Service attacked over this past year. You and your new colleagues on the Postal Service Board of Governors, I think the country is really going to be looking to you with a lot more attention than you're used to getting in terms of turning things around. Good luck to you, Amber. And as you settle in and as things get going, please come back and keep us apprised. We'll have eyes on you the whole time you're there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for having me, Rachel.
All right, we've got much more to get to tonight, including a very, very dramatic plea deal that could be very bad news for a Republican congressman today. Lots ahead. Stay with us. In March of this year, March 2nd, police in Seminole County, Florida, showed up to arrest a local Republican elected official, the local county tax collector. And the arrest was not an easy one. It didn't end up in gunfire or any other kind of tragedy, but it did veer toward the dangerous for a while. And it definitely veered into territory that you would call messy. Here's how the arresting officer described what happened in the official arrest record that day when they turned up to arrest the local tax collector. Quote, upon my arrival, contact was made with Joel via phone. Joel initially advised he would exit the residence after a short period of time and surrender himself. After that time came and passed, Joel continued to negotiate via phone. During the negotiations, Joel made suicidal comments, stating at various times that he would take pills, utilize firearms, and that he had improvised explosive devices. Joel also stated that he had hidden several items in his anal cavity. Joel opened the front door to the residence and threw a bag full of medication out into the driveway before retreating back into the residence and closing the door. That's kind of the flavor of the arrest here. That was March 2nd. They did take him into custody that day. He was already under indictment, but after that arrest, federal prosecutors would actually go on to file multiple additional charges in superseding indictments against him. Ultimately, this local tax collector would end up facing 33 different federal felony charges. And now, that local official, who is the subject of that very messy arrest when authorities finally tried to take him into custody back in March, right now, that local Republican official in Florida presents a sort of good news, bad news situation for Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. The bad news, of course, is that that local Republican official, the county tax collector, Joel Greenberg, he's a close associate, a close friend, apparently, of Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. Joel Greenberg, according to news reports, he has reportedly been telling prosecutors for months about how he and Congressman Gaetz have paid young women for sex and about what he alleges to have been considerable drug use in conjunction with those encounters. And most worryingly, he has reportedly told prosecutors about Congressman Gaetz's own alleged sexual involvement with an underage girl, apparently the same underage girl who is cited in the felony child sex trafficking charges that Mr. Greenberg himself is facing. Now, Matt Gaetz has consistently denied all of those accusations, but that's the bad news about him and his longstanding friendship with Joel Greenberg and what Joel Greenberg has reportedly been telling prosecutors. All right, that's the bad news. The only good news here for Congressman Gaetz is that Joel Greenberg has all the markings of a not super fantastic witness in any courtroom, right? In terms of his believability, his credibility, his overall gravitas. I mean, as I mentioned, he has been charged with 33 felonies, including multiple counts of fraud, one charge of making false allegations against a political rival. Also, from what the police described as the situation when they arrested him back in March, it also just seems like he's a little unhinged. That doesn't help. None of that makes for a great witness in terms of the credibility of his testimony against a sitting congressman or against anybody. But now, today, prosecutors today submitted to federal court in Florida a proposed plea agreement that they have drawn up with Joel Greenberg. And in that, they basically explain the safeguards they want to put on him to make sure he's a truthful witness. And those are considerable, and that's really interesting. But the plea agreement they filed for him today also includes all the stuff that he's pleading guilty to as part of this plea agreement. And the description of those things is long and detailed and also very gross. Here's some of it. Quote, Joel Micah Greenberg was elected as Seminole County tax collector in 2016. He started in office on or about January 3rd, 2017. During his tenure as tax collector and after his arrest in 2020, Mr. Greenberg committed multiple federal criminal offenses. Mr. Greenberg paid for commercial sex acts. In particular, Greenberg was involved in what are sometimes referred to as sugar daddy relationships, where he paid women for sex, but attempted to disguise the payments as school-related expenses or other living expenses. Greenberg had an online account at a website that advertised itself as a place where sugar daddies could find sugar babies. Ew. Greenberg used an account at that website to identify women whom he later paid to engage in commercial sex acts with him and others. Greenberg used at least 4 different accounts to pay for commercial sex acts: his personal Venmo account, his personal American Express account, his American Express account at the tax collector's office. Oh, that's nice. And his personal bank account from December 2016 to December 2018. He used those accounts to conduct more than 150 financial transactions totaling over $70,000, all of which involved Greenberg paying women for commercial sex acts using those accounts. One of the individuals who Greenberg paid for commercial sex acts was a minor under the age of 18 for part of the time when Greenberg paid her to engage in commercial sex acts. Greenberg engaged in commercial sex acts with the minor in the Middle District of Florida at least 7 times while she was a minor. During these commercial sex acts, Greenberg would often would offer and supply the minor and others with ecstasy, the drug ecstasy, which Greenberg would take himself as well. Oftentimes, Greenberg would offer to pay the minor and others an additional amount of money if they took the ecstasy. Greenberg also introduced the minor to other adult men who engaged in commercial sex acts with the minor in the Middle District of Florida. Other adult men, plural. Now, these are all statements by the prosecutor's office that don't really count as allegations anymore. These are all things that Joel Greenberg is explicitly admitting to. He has initialed every page of this proposed plea agreement. And at this point in the agreement, prosecutors go on to describe lots of corroborating evidence they say they have to support Greenberg's claims, including records of his communications with this underage girl and other stuff. They also basically nail into the wall in terms of what his time is going to be like now, now that he's turning state's evidence. I mean, listen to this. In terms of Matt Gaetz thinking about whether or not Joel Greenberg is going to truthfully and authoritatively testify against him, listen to this. Defendant agrees to cooperate fully with the United States in the investigation and prosecution of other persons and to testify subject to a prosecution for perjury or make a false statement fully or truthfully before any federal court proceeding or federal grand jury in connection with the charges in this case and other matters. Such cooperation to further include a full and complete disclosure of all relevant information, including production of any and all books, papers, documents, and other objects in defendant's possession or control, and to be reasonably available for interviews which the United States may require. The defendant may be prosecuted for any perjury or false declarations, if any, committed while testifying pursuant to this agreement, or for obstruction of justice. The United States may prosecute the defendant for the charges which are to be dismissed pursuant to this agreement, if any, and may either seek reinstatement of or refile such charges and prosecute the defendant thereon. So this is not good for Matt Gaetz. This part of the agreement is not good because this is Matt Gaetz's friend, Joel Greenberg. He has reportedly been telling investigators about him and Matt Gaetz both paying for sex, including with an underage girl. He has been facing 33 felony charges. But today he pled guilty to 6 of the 33 felonies. He signed this binding document agreeing to cooperate with prosecutors and testify against other people. If he lies to the prosecutors, he affirms here in this agreement that he will face perjury charges or obstruction of justice charges. He also affirms that if he lies or leaves anything out in cooperating with prosecutors, the other 27 felony charges against him, those are coming back. There have been 33 felonies pending against him. He's pleading guilty to 6, so they'll drop the other 27. If he is not a good cooperator, they're going to hit him with those other 27 as well as the 6 he's now pled guilty to. One of the charges he's pleading to in this agreement, the child sex trafficking charge, carries a mandatory minimum prison sentence of 10 years. So even with this cooperation agreement, it's not like the guy is skating. But the question that we can see in this plea deal is whether that same kind of charge and its 10-year minimum prison sentence is now credibly looming over Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. One of the lead reporters covering this story is going to join us next. Stay with us.
And politicians, it connects businesses and commerce to people and customers. It connects